Welcome back, Leanaholics. I'm your host, Dr. Luke. Today, I'm just going to be giving you a walkthrough of the DMAIC phases. So we're going to just walk briefly through this since we haven't done this yet, and I hope you're watching this as one of the first ones. So we have the define, measure, analyze, improve, and control phases. Now, when we're defining the problem, the first thing we want to do is look at the problem from the customer's perspective, the business perspective, from the key stakeholders' perspective. We want to get all those perspectives together and really define that problem. You'd be surprised how many times we get a month into a project, sometimes two, which I don't like long-running projects, but if you have longer projects, by the time you're a couple months in, I'll ask people, hey, what exactly are you trying to solve for? And no joke, I can tell you 75% of the time they forgot, or they can't, or it takes them 5 minutes to tell me what they're trying to solve for. When in all reality, by the time you walk out of that define phase, it should be so unbelievably clear, nobody can interpret that. So remember the charter video, nobody can interpret that problem statement. And the problem statement should be maybe 1 to 3 sentences at the most, and we should all know what it is. What exactly are we here for? What are we trying to solve? And then when we get the voice of the customer's perspective, we need to know, is this the right problem from their perspective and from the business's perspective and the key stakeholders? So are we solving the right problem for the right reason at the right time? So we want to look at the problem from several different perspectives, make sure we're defining it very, very clearly. So once we've defined the project itself, so not just the problem statement, but the actual project, we've got our mission, our vision, we know which way we're headed with this. We don't know the answers and the solutions, but we do know where we're headed now. At least we've got a heading on the compass and we can start heading that direction. And then we want to measure the process. And we measure, we're looking at from the as-is perspective, meaning what's our current state right now? What does the data look like right now? No changes, no updates, no new procedures, no nothing. This is just simply collecting data on what the process is doing right now. How's it performing? And when we do that measure phase, this is where you end up with that capability analysis, because you're measuring the baseline data and you're answering that question of, are we capable of meeting customer expectations? So you define the problem, then you measure the problem. So define it so we know what we're trying to solve for, which direction we're heading. Then we measure the problem to say, okay, are we meeting customer expectations? And if the answer is probably no, that's why you're doing the project. Well, how far off are we? And we're going to quantify that. And we also want to know during the measure phase, how is our process actually behaving at this point? So that's where in your capability analysis, you have your control charts, your capability analysis, right? Remember normality, stability, capability, kind of running through all those three. Then when we get to analyze, we've gone from defining the problem to measuring the problem, saying, are we capable of meeting customer expectations? No. How far off are we? I don't know, 20% of our data is falling outside of the upper spec limits. Okay, great. Well, why? And that's what the analyze phase is. Let's get to the root cause. Why are we actually having these problems? We want to dig down to the root of the problem and make sure we're actually solving the problem and not some symptom of the problem. This is where your 5 whys and your fishbone diagram, maybe your cause and effect matrices, whichever ones you're using, right? Tree diagrams, you name it. There's all sorts of tools and fun stuff that we can use. And then we move on to the improve phase. So once you've defined it, then you've measured, are we capable of meeting customer expectations? No. And then the analyze phase said, well, why aren't we meeting customer expectations? Then we got to the root cause. Then we move on to the improve phase and we say, well, what are we going to do about those root causes? What countermeasures are we going to put into place? How can we improve this process? So this is where we're going to do like either plan, do, check, act. We're going to be probably using design of experiments if you're in black belt, maybe master black belt. But if you're yellow, green, you're probably sticking to like plan, do, check, act, doing something like that. You're experimenting. You're seeing if different variables change based on the root cause of where you found your waste and variation in the process. You're then going to be checking to see, how can I improve this? Right? And then we'll run some experiments. We'll do our proof of concept. So we'll do it on a small scale, and then we'll up it a little bit, doing a learning launch and actually trying to learn with some real customers. But anyway, we're piloting this thing to say, let's make some improvements. So define the problem, we measure the problem. We're capable of meeting customer expectations? Nope. Why not? Okay, we found the root cause. Improve. Now let's just say we've rolled out our full-scale implementation plan at this point, and now we need to control. So in the control phase, this is actually where I tell our students, or if you remember from the classroom, I say this is where Lean Six Sigma gets its black eye most of the time. Because define, measure, analyze, and improve are fun. They really are. Who doesn't like solving problems? So you solve this problem, you experimented, you put this new process into place. Well, guess what? Now the discipline of following through comes in. That's what the control phase is all about. How do we maintain a state of control charts, using those to see, hey, how's our process behaving? Is it behaving how we said it would? And if things start to slip and revert back a little bit, what are we going to do about it? Hence the control plan, which helps us to make sure that we sustain those gains. And we got our standard operating procedures, our work instructions. We got to do our visual displays, our visual management, right? So we got to update all of our boards, all of our knowledge management, our learning management. But all of these things happen in the control phase. So we define the problem, we measure the problem to answer, are we capable of meeting customer expectation? The answer is no. Well, why not? So we find the root cause of the waste and variation. What's preventing us from meeting our customer expectations? And then we put countermeasures into place and we improve the process. Then once we've improved the process, discipline kicks in, and that's the control phase. So don't walk away from a project before that control phase is done. Natural question, Luke, when's the control phase done? And I'm going to tell you an answer that nobody likes to hear. It depends. But I will give you a general rule of thumb. If it took you a month to do the project, generally following through for a month is usually pretty good as well. If it took you 3 months to do the project, maybe doing 3 months. So when you're doing your control plan, like we learned in class, do that 1 hour control plan, check on that thing. 1 hour, we collect some data, put it through a capability analysis. Is it normality, stability, capability? Or if it's not normal, fine, maybe we're looking at averages. So hopefully we get enough sample averages to where it's normal, it's capable, and it's stable. So don't forget to follow through during the control phase for at least the amount of time that you did to do the project. That's why I kind of jokingly say you're at halftime in the project. Not that you have so much more work to do, but that you just need to follow through for a period of time. You're probably already moving on to another project, as you should be, but you still need to make sure that you've tied up all the loose ends with the other one. Do we have our standard operating procedures published? Are they out there? Has the training plan been put into place and implemented? Right? So are people trained on the new process? Do they have their work instructions? Do they have the standard operating procedures? Have I updated the new process maps? Are we monitoring the control plan weekly for the next maybe month, 2 months, 3 months, however long the project was? Right? Again, that's only a rule of thumb your organization is going to have to help answer that. Even with our clients, it depends on the client. So generally speaking, I tell people you're at halftime. So at least settle in for the long haul. Understand that it doesn't take that much time to follow through, but it takes a lot of discipline to do it. But back to the main point, which is define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. And I would argue that I have used this problem-solving methodology, and I am, again, anybody that's been in our classes that knows I use the phrase dogmatic, because I am the least dogmatic person on the planet. But I can tell you a framework like DMAIC, when it's followed appropriately and followed through all the way till the end, can be used to solve almost any one of your problems. But I can show you how you can use DMAIC for engineering a process, re-engineering a process, not having to do DMEDI, you can look that up, DMEDI, or IPOV, or any one of these other ones. DMAIC is the core framework that if you truly understand how to use it and understand the innovation that it was built with in mind, when you really understand that, it can solve a lot. It can be the framework that solves just about all of your problems at your organization. As long as you're not dogmatic and think that every tool is used in a certain way or every phase is used in a certain way. If you know how to manipulate them a little bit, use the framework as a framework only. Think about a house. House has a frame, right? That frame is there for what? It's the outside and frames the house. What happens on the inside of the house? Well, that's different on every house. It's custom. You might have a master bathroom over here where I have the living room. You might have a master bedroom over here, and that's like the where I'm going to put the outdoor pool, right? That'll be the outside area. So your house will look different than my house. That's how I explain different problems that we solve. The lean is going to be the framework that solves all of these. And DMAIC is the process that we can follow that'll help us think through every step. We don't need all the steps in DMAIC all the time, but it'll help us to think through logically through solving the problem from defining it all the way to sustaining the gain. So DMAIC is a very, very powerful tool when it's used correctly. And by correctly, that means not dogmatically. So it's actually really funny how I explain that. People who follow it rigid can hardly solve any problems. People who use it as a framework, as a thought process, almost like a mental model, just something that I can use, well, guess what? We can innovate, create, adapt, and we can use DMAIC for a lot of things. So I don't want to step on too many toes by getting too off course by saying I'm going to use it for process engineering and re-engineering. I do, but it takes a lot of experience to do that, and I've proven it over and over because I've designed many processes from scratch using DMAIC. I've also gone into organizations and used DMAIC where other things have failed in the past for using these so-called problem-solving methodologies. Because the problem is we always get so darn dogmatic with them. Just understand this thing was meant to have a lot of freedom and a lot of agility and a lot of innovation built in if you just understand how to use it and how not to use it. That's a quick explanation of how the DMAIC framework is used, and also I threw in a little bit at the end there and went on a tangent, got on a soapbox of how powerful DMAIC can be. Hope this helps clarify your understanding of what the DMAIC process is all about. Hope to see you in the classroom.